Hi, today I want to make a video about an economic topic, which is the different market structures existing in the world. It's important for us to identify which market structures are which and how can we tell by looking at their characteristics. So, usually there are four factors that we take into consideration when we want to identify a market structure. The four factors are, first of all, the number of buyers and sellers in the market, and secondly is the ease of entry to the market, and the third one is whether the products are differentiated or are they homogeneous. If they are homogeneous, means that all products in the industry you can say it's the same. So for example, if you buy apples from person A, or if you buy them from person B, you can expect the apples to be almost the same, almost identical, regardless of where you buy it. Of course, there will be differences, but the nature of the product is almost the same. Whereas if you buy smartphones, for example, a smartphone from Apple and smartphone from Samsung will not necessarily be the same. They will have some different brands and different functions. So that's an example. And the last one are the access to information that the firms in the industry have. So, for example, in monopoly market, you can expect the only person or the only entity that has most of the information is the one monopolistic firm that is operating the industry. Whereas if you look at a perfectly competitive market, all sellers and buyers have good information about the product that they are buying. So let me describe the main four market structures in detail. The first one is called perfectly competitive market. We also call it perfect competition. It's the ideal market structure that we should all strive to achieve. So the reason for that is because in a perfectly competitive market, all buyers and sellers have equal information, and there are a lot of buyers and sellers operating like in the market, and also the barriers of entry is very low. All of this make for a very efficient market. The reason for that is because if the barriers to entry is low, which means that new firms can enter the market whenever they want. Because the startup cost is relatively low and the barriers to exit is also low. So new firms can enter easily. It's usually when the existing firms are making a supernormal profit, which means they are earning more than they should have, that new firms will want to enter the industry. So this serves as an incentive for the existing firms to not to exploit their market power and try to gain supernormal profit. Because if they try to do so, then new firms can enter the market and try to take the profit away from them. Which means that in a perfectly competitive market, the existing firms must try to remain efficient and try to keep their costs low. And there is no prospect for earning supernormal profit in the long run, because if supernormal profit exists, new firms will enter and the profit will balance out. And also the existing firms, or almost every firms in a perfectly competitive markets, are price takers, because a firm cannot set its own price. If it does try to do so, let's say the firm try to earn supernormal profit by charging a higher price, then because all of the buyers have equal access to information and they have a lot of sellers to choose from, if they see you, the firm, charging a higher price, they can straight away buy from other sellers instead. And that is possible because all of the products in a perfectly competitive market are homogeneous, which meant that you cannot charge a higher price than you should have. So firms cannot set their own price, either higher or lower, or else no buyers would choose to buy from them. So that's an example. So all of this combined together makes firms in perfectly competitive market very efficient ones. The second type of market structure is monopolistic competition. So monopolistic competition is when there are some extent of product differentiation that is attached to the products that are sold in the market. So I'll give you some example. At the start of the video, I talked about apples, right? So regardless of where you buy apples, they are almost the same. But if we consider other types of products, for example, bread can be homogeneous. But if a bakery or a store try to make their bread and they design their bread or use different raw materials to make their bread in order to make them taste better, they are able to differentiate their breads from those from other sellers, which meant that they are able to establish a certain level of brand loyalty on their products. So there is a possibility that new consumers would form a certain amount of loyalty to the seller of the bread and refuse to buy the same product from other people. So in this situation, barriers to entry exist because new firms, when they want to enter, they must weigh up the pros and cons of entering the market. And the cost of them doing so is that they have to break down the barriers to entry, which is they have to defeat the brand loyalty that is attached to existing firms. So that is an example of the barriers. And there is a certain level of barriers to entry. It's not high, but it exists. The number of sellers and buyers are also high, but there are relatively few sellers and as compared to the perfectly competitive market due to the existence of barriers to entry. And the third one, firms generally have good access to information, but they also know it when other firms charge a different price, and that is possible to charge a different price because firms are able to set their own price when the demand curve is not perfectly elastic. So I'll put it into simpler terms, which meant that in a monopolistically competitive market, firms can charge a different price than the other sellers are charging. This is possible because, as I mentioned before, brand loyalty exists due to product differentiation. If they are able to differentiate their product and make them taste better or seem more special to the consumers, even if they charge a higher price, there will still be people to buy from them and prefer their products over the others. And the third one is an oligopoly. In an oligopoly, there are few firms but a lot of buyers in the market. So generally, when we talk about oligopoly, we consider concentration ratio. So what is a concentration ratio? It is a measure of the market power that each of the firms have. So I'll tell you how it's measured. First of all, you take let's say we want to consider the concentration ratio of the top 4 firms in the industry, and we call it 4-firm concentration ratio. And the way we measure it is that we consider the total market share of the top 4 firms. We divide it by the total amount of sales in the industry. We divide the sales of the top 4 firms by the total sales, and we times it with 100%, and we are left with a percentage of market power that the firms have. Or perhaps to put it in the more precise term, a 4-firm concentration ratio measures the level of market share that the top 4 firms have. So why is this measure important? It's because when we are able to measure the 4-firm concentration ratios, we are able to identify the market structure. So let's say if we see that the 4 firms concentration ratio is over 60, then we are able to identify the market structure, which is an oligopoly. And it's not just an oligopoly, it's a very highly oligopolistic market. So let's talk about let's say smartphones. Smartphones are the industry for smartphones are oligopolistic, which meant that there are a few large firms that dominates the market, and they hold very big market share. And the reason they are able to do that is because they are high barriers to entry. So I'll give you some examples of barriers to entry right now in details. They are generally 4 types. The first one are the legal barriers. So when the new firms want to enter a market, they have to find their own production methods. If they wish to use the production methods of the existing firms, they might have to acquire patent from the existing firm. Or let's say they want to design their products in a certain way. They should also ask the existing firms if they have legal rights to a certain design, which are more efficient. So new firms will have to get past the barrier and seek permission. So it also happens when some industries are state-owned, so only government are able to sell or operate in this industry. So let's say railroads, for example. Some government want to control the sales of railroads, right? And when a private firm want to enter the industry, it might have to get a license from the government in order to enter the market. And the second one are the market barriers. So the existing firms will try to set up some barriers in order to give them exclusive control and exclusive power in that industry. So for example, some firms might use advertising to make their product seems like a better choice, or they might establish a brand and in order to make their products more competitive in the market. So this, we call it non-price competition, because they do not increase or decrease their price in order to attract consumers, but they do it differently. They use some other factors such as advertising, brand proliferation, and they use innovation in terms of their process, their production process, and the product itself, or they also use market segmentation. So I'll describe each of them in detail. Advertising means that it's kind of obvious, means that they spend some cost in order to establish brand loyalty. Let's say they hire some influencers in order to promote their products. That's advertising. And brand proliferation is basically the firm diversify the products that they put onto the market, and they make their brands so frequently so that all of the brands that the firm have almost saturate the market and leave no room for other firms to entry the market, because all of the brands are owned by the firm and most consumers will choose to buy the product from that firm. And process innovation is basically when the firms try to reduce their cost of production, so therefore they can get profit even if they charge a lower price. And they are only able to do that is because existing firms are generally larger, and if they are larger, they're able to exploit their economies of scale, which means that their production cost is actually lower. So when they have lower production costs, new firms cannot compete with them, because the existing firms can use a strategy called predatory pricing, which they reduce the price that they charge, and the new firms are not able to gain a profit at that price. But the existing firms may be able to do so because their cost is lower, or even if they are not able to gain profit at that price, they are able to exploit their economies of scope, which means that they have other products available. So even if this product currently is making a loss, I am able to compensate that loss by using the profit I gain from the sales of other products. So this is called cross-subsidization and product innovation. So larger firms are able to invest more and to make their product appeal more to customers. And this also establishes barriers to entry. And the last one is market segmentation. Some firms might find out most of their consumers are kids or adults or elderlies, in order to establish some marketing strategies to appeal more towards their customers. So that's market segmentation. So barriers to entry exist in oligopolistic market. And we move on to the last type of market structure that we're going to talk about today, which is the monopolistic market. So monopolistic market occurs when there are only one seller in the market, but there are many buyers. So what happens is, the single firm that's operating holds all the market power in the industry. They are able to charge any price they want. I mean, almost able to charge any price they want. But of course, they can't charge a very high price, because if they do so, they will still face a very low demand. So what happens is, a monopolistic market have a very inelastic demand curve. So it's sloping like that. And they generally will charge a higher price for their product, and also sell their products at a lower quantity in order to gain supernormal profit. And because in a monopolistic market, there are very high barriers to entry. So in some industries, the monopoly is a natural one, a natural monopoly. It's because if a firm want to produce in aerospace industry, the startup cost, the capital investment that's needed at the start is very high, it's enormous. It's not something that small firms or small entrepreneurs are able to step inside the market, because they are not able to raise the finance needed to step inside. Or I will give you another example. There is also high barriers to exit. So barriers to exit happens when the sunk cost is high. So when I speak of sunk cost, I refer to the cost that is not recoverable when a firm leaves the market. So they buy a lot of capital, they invested a lot, but if the business plan doesn't work out and they want to exit the market, they are not able to recover the cost, because the assets that they bought, the capital that they bought, are not transferable to other industries. So when firms enter the market, it goes with the risk that all of their costs are not recoverable, and therefore they will think twice before they enter the market. So it leads us to a conclusion that barriers to exit is also a form of barriers to entry, if that makes sense to you. So we know that in a monopolistic market, the barriers of entry is high. So sometimes it's a natural one, because the startup cost is high, barriers of entry is high. And sometimes the barriers of entry is created by the government using patents, like the legal rights that a government can confer to a firm that operates in a single market. And also, the amount of information that people have in the market is generally only confined to the single seller. The buyers do not have perfect information, because there are no other people to compare to. There are only one sellers. So whatever price that the firm charge, we as buyers have to accept. So sometimes a monopolistic market can bring a lot of disadvantages, such as a low efficiency, low productive efficiency, because a firm can charge whatever price it wants, and no other firms can compete with the firm. So the firm has no incentive to reduce their costs or to achieve productive efficiency. It is also not able to achieve allocative efficiency, because there's no consumer preference. You can either buy from me, the single seller, or you don't buy it at all. So technically, the firm doesn't really need to understand the preference of the consumers. So it is not able to produce the right products at the right quantity. We might generally assume that a monopolistic market is necessarily a bad one. Well, it might not be so, because a monopolistic firm is a very big one, and when it is big, it is able to exploit economies of scale. Economies of scale happen when a firm is so huge and is able to reduce their costs. So there are a few reasons why economies of scale happens. I'll give you some examples. So first of all, they are able to exploit marketing economies of scale, where they reduce their average advertising costs, because they only have to market once for so many products available. And second one is like technical economies of scales. They are able to attract skilled labor. They are able to buy better capital in order to keep their production costs low. So they are also able to raise finance easier, because they are huge, so they are lower risk to the bank side to lend money to the bigger firm as compared to the smaller ones, because the smaller ones might not be able to pay their debt. So with all of these benefits combined, they're able to charge a lower cost than if other firms are to operate in the market. So, and also monopolistic market, because they have a certain sense of anticipation of higher profit, and they also have a sense of security as well, because no other firms will enter and steal all the profit away. So firms are able to invest more into their business because higher security, and they are able to invest more, which improve product innovation and process innovation. So it's something to be weighed up and down upon. So this is the end of this video, and I hope it's helpful. I also will attach my notes, economics notes, in the description box, so you can check that out. I've already uploaded it on study pool. So we'll see in the next video, and I hope you gain a lot in this economic topic.